Death, death, death. Death is something you see a lot in animes, especially the death of beloved characters. Death on a massive scale that shows are usually so over the top, it doesn't even attempt to have you care for all the hundreds of people that die. And then there are characters that are actually named Death, but rarely do we see a show that looks at the afterlife. Well, in this case, it's more like the middle man's afterlife, where you play a game to decide your fate, to where you go to heaven, or maybe in this case, reincarnation, or hell. And again, in this case, the void. And this is what Death Parade does. It takes people, whether connected or not, who die at the same time and throws them into a flurry of games like bowling or air hockey in this bar-like place called Quindecim. But these aren't any sort of regular games. They usually have some sort of twist that will try to push the people playing to their limit and reveal their past that they had. And be in mind that these people think they will die if they don't win, not knowing they are already dead and having no memory of their past. And depending on how they react in these intense situations is then up to the arbiter to decide where they end up. And along with the fun of guessing where each person goes, we get a look into deep, dark parts of people, where some may go as far as killing the other person that they're playing with to win. And this is a 50-50 bag on whether you can actually relate to some of these people, being one of them is a murderer, which I really hope that you can't relate to that. But the show does a good job of showing these characters confront their demons and go from these calm people to seeing their outer darkness. And for these episodic episodes, they take up about 7 or so episodes of the series, with the other half focusing on the arbiters, and for our case, mainly Decim or Decim and his assistant, and the inner workings of this purgatory-like place. For the most part, it is pretty interesting. Thing is, the show brings up multiple points that are ultimately never brought up again, and it somewhat tricks you into thinking that there is more to watch or get, and yet it kind of leaves it empty, such as a point like the rising in human deaths is brought up once, like a big plot point that's going to come later on, and then that character that this conversation was with is never brought up again. And while the end is well done, it doesn't feel completely finished, and they could have honestly fit a season 2. But it's been a while, so I sadly doubt that will happen. And ultimately, besides some things feeling unneeded and feeling of needing more, the show is very enjoyable, from seeing random characters play these games and seeing their transformation from the beginning of the episodes to the end, and also the inner workings of Quindecim and Decim's mysterious assistant. The story is enjoyable and worth a watch just for these reasons. The big focus of the more episodic episodes is, of course, the players of the games, and while not all of them are relatable, I think that they are all handled pretty well, and the relationships and stories between them and seeing it unravel is enjoyable and kind of shocking at times to watch in its own right. But for the reoccurring characters like Decim or Decim, who can be seen as the sort of MC, is largely emotionless and doesn't seem to understand the emotions that humans have. And while he never is the main focus of these episodic episodes, we do see how the interactions between the peoples playing the game, people playing the games affect Decim. And he gets some realistic and enjoyable development from it, and his presence as this stoic sort of character is an interesting balance to the actual seeing people show off their inner feelings. We also get an understanding that even he makes mistakes and can make you wonder in the end if his decisions are actually right. Then there is his assistant, who is never actually named, so people just called her Black-Haired Girl. I believe she gets a name at the very end, but I'm not gonna say that. But ooh, mysterious. And that is honestly her character. She's pretty mysterious, who seems to actually have emotions unlike Decim, and so the interplay between the two is interesting, where she can somewhat help out Decim when he has trouble understanding certain situations. She also does have her own arc, which is largely the end of the show. It has its strange parts during the arc, but ultimately ends pretty well. And then we have best girl Nona, who has a chipper and playful attitude, yet has her period, where she is sly and somewhat abrasive too. And yet we do have characters that have their purpose. They can actually feel more like a sidetrack more than anything, because they aren't given enough time in the end to feel needed, such as Ginty, who I like, and he's a nice contract to Decim as another arbiter, but his arc feels like it was more there to just have some variety of the type of arbiters, and his arc doesn't exactly feel needed. And there are bigger points like this with characters that show up and then just disappear, like I said earlier. But being that Decim, the Black-Haired Girl, and Nona are largely the main focus of the show, and also the way they handled a lot of the miniature stories in the episodic episodes, those few smaller things are unneeded may annoy you, but ultimately I don't think hurts the enjoyment of the show. This is a very unique looking show with using a very dark palette of colors and sort of monotone to when it comes to people. But the show chooses to make things like the games that they play and also the eyes of the arbiters more colorful and have a sort of glowing feeling to them, which gives it a sense of importance, and also giving a monotone palette in different areas, giving them sort of a mysterious tone. And I think it fits the tone very well, and the designs of the characters as a whole are unique, especially the MCs. But having the random people come in have a realistic sort of look, but unique enough to tell their designs to be different, and you can tell them apart. And of course, this show, being made by Madhouse, has very crisp animation and fluid with character motions and also the raw emotions that you can see on people's faces. Yummy. That's spit and snot. And the action parts overall, with smoke exploding out of the ground, and a lot of the games in general are smooth and energetic and brings an intensity when it comes to high intention moments. As for the music, the OST I feel is a more calming tone with a lot of jazz sort of music, something I feel you would hear with a bar or say in Vegas, a very quiet part of Vegas, which fits the bar scene in playing these sort of games, while still having the calmer music to add to the impending tension that you know is soon to come, and also the sad, more emotional moments too, with most of the music being accompanied by the piano, a bass guitar, and a saxophone sometimes, and the music is composed by Hayashi Yuki, who is known for Hero Academy, which is out right now, and Hayuku, with his music overall being solid and unique for each of these shows. And oh boy, if you know anything about this show without seeing it, then you will most likely at least have heard how amazing the opening is, and well, yeah, pretty damn hype and energetic, with somewhat contrast with the show, and the animation behind it is lively and upbeat. But if you look closer, you can see a few morbid and meaningful things inside it. But if you don't see it, then it's just still fun to watch. And as for the ending, it may not be as energetic as the OP, not actually at all, but it is more of a song that would you expect from being slower, with a strong electric guitar playing and sounding pretty somber, with a background that shows the scenes of the aftermath from the episode. And overall, the show has a solid OST with a great opening and art style that is atmospheric and has a very crisp animation. And I guess what I'm trying to say is the show looks pretty nice and sounds pretty good too. And finally, this is a great episodic series that takes a look at how people cope with death and also how dark people will go when put in situations in which they think their life is on the line. And even though it does have areas that feel incomplete and the show does take some unneeded turns, the interesting premise, characters, and atmosphere warrants the show a give it a watch. Otherwise, tell me what you thought of the show if you've already watched it, or if you think you might watch it now. But my name is the Arcane Keyblade, and I will see you all in the next video or review. Peace out.